The Marajo Jiu-Jitsu Club gleamed under gold-lettered branding and polished black walls. Overhead lights cast a steady glow across the yellow mat, thick and gleaming like lacquered wood. Guests in silk shirts and sharp shoes lined the walls, sipping from crystal glasses, murmuring with the smooth indifference of old money and sharper pride. Tessa Ramos sat alone near the edge of the mat, cross-legged, her hands resting lightly in her lap. She wore a plain white gi, unmarked by logos or patches. Her belt matched white, but softened with time, its edges slightly frayed, her long blonde hair draped loosely down her back, catching the light in faint waves. She had not spoken since entering. No one quite knew who she was. A junior coordinator had introduced her earlier as a guest, then quickly moved on. She wasn't on the demo list. She wasn't stretching. She wasn't networking. She just watched. On the mat, men in embroidered black gis warmed up with laughs and sharp slaps to the chest. A few exchanged takedowns with performative flair. Sergio, the lead instructor, tall, muscular, with a close-cropped beard, loomed over them all, joking loudly as he surveyed the room like a host proud of his empire. He looked once toward Tessa and smirked. She didn't react. Her gaze was steady, not wide-eyed, not timid, just quiet, tracking every movement like a musician listening for missed notes. There was something about her stillness that made some guests glance twice, then dismiss it. A woman like that sitting in silence, wearing a guy with no rank, no presence, was probably new or forgotten. And in this place, where dominance gleamed as brightly as gold, silence wasn't expected to mean strength. Not yet. "Miss, could you grab a towel?" a man in a gray rash guard asked as he pointed to a sweat puddle near the mat's edge. Tessa didn't move. He waved again, louder this time. "Someone spilled here. Can you clean it before the warm-up?" Another voice chimed in, casual but condescending. "She probably doesn't speak Portuguese. Maybe she's someone's girlfriend, here for the spectacle." Someone laughed near the back. "Nah, no way. She's probably staff. Or new. That belt's never seen a roll." Tessa sat quietly, legs folded, her gaze fixed on the center of the mat. Her white gi looked freshly laundered but worn soft by time. The belt had no creases but bore the gentle shine of age. Her hands remained relaxed in her lap. A young instructor carrying a clipboard walked by and smirked. "You here for the free trial, sweetheart?" She said nothing. To her left, a pair of junior students whispered and pointed. One held up his phone, filming a slow, theatrical pan across her body as she sat quietly. Yoga class crashed the mat. The caption read. He added laughing emojis as he hit upload. Sergio, now standing at the center in his black gi with gold-threaded embroidery, scanned the room with casual command. He stretched one arm, rolled his shoulders, then looked over toward Tessa. "You," he said, loud enough to carry. "We need a body. You can help with the warm-up demo." Some guests clapped. A few chuckled. One man raised his glass in mock salute. Tessa didn't move. "She can't hurt anyone," Sergio added, flashing a grin. "Let her be Uke. We'll keep it light, make the warm-up funnier." Someone shouted, "Put the yoga girl on her back." Another voice added, "Just don't break her. We need her for janitor duty after." Still silent, Tessa stood. She moved slowly, deliberately, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear as she stepped onto the mat. The yellow surface glowed beneath the overhead lights. Around her, dress shoes, leather loafers, and sneakers crowded the edge. Phones were raised, filming. Sergio approached with a casual bounce to his steps. He cracked his neck, then made an exaggerated show of rolling his shoulders, as if warming up for a professional bout. "I'll go easy," he said to the crowd, then looked at her. "Don't worry. I won't toss you too hard." Tessa didn't respond. "She's got the posture of a mannequin." Someone called out, "Bet she's never rolled once in her life." "Did someone lose their intern?" another asked, drawing more laughter. One woman leaned toward her friend, voice dripping with disdain. "Who shows up to a place like this with a white belt and no patch? She looks like she wandered in off the street." A man at the far end of the room turned his phone to record, whispering into the camera. "Demo time." They're gonna fold her like laundry. On the mat, Tessa stood barefoot, her feet light on the surface. Her gi hung loose but fitted. Her eyes never left Sergio's chest. She didn't raise her arms or bounce on her toes. She didn't posture. To the crowd, she looked paralyzed. To Sergio, she looked fragile. "Ready?" he asked, smiling as he shifted into stance. Tessa gave a single nod. He stepped forward and circled her once, his movements slow and theatrical. The crowd chuckled again. He lunged lightly toward her hip. She turned, allowing his hand to miss, then stepped back to center. "Slippery already," he joked. "Not bad." Someone whistled. She blinked. "Careful. She's got invisible stripes," came another voice. More laughter. The instructor feinted again. This time he grabbed her sleeve. She didn't resist, just turned with him, her stance adjusting like a reed in wind. The grip slipped, and he lost his balance for a beat before resetting. Sergio's brow furrowed slightly. He hadn't expected that. He came again, a little harder this time, a sharp grip to her collar. She moved with him again, not resisting, not pushing. He staggered half a step before regaining control. The laughter slowed. He shot her a sharper look now. "You're quick," he muttered. Tessa stood still. "All right," Sergio said louder. "Let's give the people something." He stepped in again, this time aiming for a proper takedown and inside trip. His foot swept toward hers. She didn't block it. She simply wasn't there anymore. He turned and missed completely. The force of his own movement carried him forward. He stumbled. Someone in the audience gasped. She moved. One person asked. She barely did anything. Another replied. Phones kept recording. Sergio looked back, cheeks flushed. He raised both hands now. Serious. "Okay," he said. "One more." He charged not recklessly, but with intent. He reached for her lapel, drove his weight forward, ready to muscle her down with a shoulder lock. Her body rotated. She didn't counter. She redirected. He lost contact. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. One woman lowered her phone. The instructor stumbled forward, and Tessa returned to her place, her feet gliding softly across the yellow mat. Her hands still hadn't risen. Sergio took a breath. Again, he barked. But the crowd was no longer laughing. Some stood. Others narrowed their eyes, confused. A man near the back whispered, "This isn't a joke." A student whispered to a partner, "Why isn't she striking?" Sergio hesitated. He looked down at the mat, then at her. Tessa's face showed nothing. Not strain, not fear, not victory. Just breath, just stillness. She waited. So did everyone else. And the silence that followed was louder than the laughter had ever been. "Just keep your hands up, little bird," Sergio said with a smirk, circling slowly. His tone was casual, the confidence in his voice bordering on smug. The crowd chuckled lightly, relieved to see the show resume. The tension from her earlier evasion had unsettled the rhythm. Now, they expected a return to dominance. Tessa stood with her feet gently placed on the yellow mat, her arms at her sides, her eyes following his chest. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't speak. She breathed slowly, deliberately. Sergio lunged low, aiming for a foot sweep. Her heel lifted before contact, pivoting her weight fluidly. His hand brushed air. He reset with a shrug. "Lucky timing," he said to the crowd, laughing. "She's slippery." Another attempt. This time, a sharp grip to her shoulder. His fingers closed. She turned with him. No resistance, no pushback, just absence where he expected tension. He frowned, readjusted. A more deliberate step now, an inside trip, aiming to off-balance her. She sidestepped the pressure. He stumbled half a foot, recovered quickly, trying to mask the misstep with a chuckle. "Okay," he muttered. From the edge of the mat, the crowd quieted. No one laughed this time. Phones stayed raised, but some eyes narrowed, uncertain. Sergio attacked again, a shoulder grip with an arm drag. Tessa flowed with it, redirecting his energy with a pivot. His own motion carried him further than intended. He grunted, stumbled forward, and turned with a flicker of frustration. She hadn't touched him, still hadn't raised her arms. His breathing quickened. He approached again. Tighter now. No smile. A grip to her lapel, deep and controlling. He pulled. She moved not away, but with... The pull turned empty. His momentum shifted without resistance. He nearly tripped. He stepped back, adjusted his belt, wiped his brow. "She's not doing anything," someone whispered. "Exactly," someone else murmured. Sergio's jaw tightened. He glanced at the edge of the mat where a black belt instructor stood watching silently. Another grip, another redirection. Again. No contact from her, just space and breath. His movements grew sharper, rougher. A grip behind her neck now, aiming to break posture. She rotated with the pull, slipped his line, and stood in perfect balance beside him. He panted. Tessa blinked slowly, her breathing unchanged. "You're playing games," he growled under his breath. She remained still. He stepped back, reset his stance, eyes narrowed. Then he charged. A full-speed clinch, both arms out. He aimed low, driving for a leg pick, a powerful, sweeping motion meant to take her down hard and fast. Tessa moved one step to the left. Not a dodge, a redirection. His arms met empty space. His balance failed. His speed betrayed him. Sergio crashed forward, chest first onto the yellow mat. The impact echoed like a clap through the silent room. Tessa stood exactly where she had been, her hands still at her sides. No one spoke. Sergio stayed down for a second longer than necessary. When he pushed himself up, his face was red not just from exertion, but from something deeper. Humiliation. The crowd didn't cheer. No one clapped. One person lowered their phone slowly. Another swallowed hard, unsure of what they were seeing. Tessa took a small step back. Letting Sergio rise unchallenged, she didn't turn away. She didn't bow. She simply breathed. The instructor beside the wall took one half step forward, then stopped. His hands were at his sides, his expression unreadable. Sergio stood fully now, wiping sweat from his brow. His chest rose and fell in quick bursts. His gaze darted toward the guests, as if searching for something, an excuse, a laugh, a way out. There was none. Her bare feet remained rooted. Her white GI didn't shift. Her breath moved like the wind, quiet, rhythmic, unaffected. She hadn't attacked. She hadn't countered. She had never needed to. And now, the room was silent, not from politeness, but from something heavier. A realization none of them could name yet, but all had begun to feel. The embroidered name, the controlled environment, they had meant nothing. Not here, not now. One student near the door whispered to another, "What was that?" "I don't know," came the answer, but it wasn't jiu-jitsu. Still, Tessa stood. Sergio stepped back again, rolling his shoulder. "One more," he said, but there was no conviction in the words. Tessa didn't answer. He hesitated, then moved but slower, less sure. She didn't move at all. He paused mid-step, hand raised halfway, uncertain. His breathing had calmed, but his confidence had not returned. He dropped his hand, looked down, stepped off the mat. Tessa stood alone in the center, surrounded by silence, sweat, and disbelief. And still, her hands had never risen. Sergio remained seated on the mat, his head bowed, sweat clinging to his jawline. He didn't look at her. Around the room, no one moved. The silence pressed against the walls, heavy and uncertain. One black belt at the far end of the dojo spoke quietly, almost to himself. What was that? No one answered. From the edge of the room, Master Farias stood. His steps were deliberate, slow. He walked barefoot across the mat, his black gi open at the collar, embroidered in gold. His expression was unreadable as he crossed the space between them, the crowd parting without instruction. He stopped in front of her. Tessa remained still. The two stood facing each other beneath the warm lights. Behind her, the dojo's golden logo glowed against the black wall. The contrast framed her like a silhouette from an older world. Farias bowed. Not a nod. A full, deep bow, shoulders bent, head lowered, hands loose at his sides. "Tessa Ramos," he said quietly, his voice clear and reverent. The last of the soft path lineage. The words fell into the silence like stones in still water. Gasps rose from a few corners. Someone dropped their water bottle. Another student lowered his phone without realizing it. Tessa returned the bow graceful, controlled, still silent. Whispers bloomed. Soft path. I thought it was a myth. She didn't strike. She didn't even touch him. Farias lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers. I had no idea you'd returned, he said, regret lining every syllable. If I had known, I would have never allowed this. She said nothing. Her silence was not cold, it was complete, like a master's final answer. Sergio looked up then, eyes wide but unfocused. He started to rise but stayed kneeling. He wiped his brow with the edge of his sleeve, his breathing still uneven. He did not speak. Master Farias turned slightly, addressing the room without raising his voice. Tessa trained under Master Chen, the old mountain lineage. No ranks, no competitions, just flow, breath, presence. A few nodded slowly, others looked down. In the quiet, the dojo felt like a different place. Less performance, more reverence. Farias looked back to her. We thought it was gone, he said. Chen passed years ago. For a moment, Tessa's gaze softened. A flicker of memory passed across her face, brief and unspoken. The scent of rain on stone, mist curling through pine trees, her bare feet tracing patterns in morning light as Chen moved beside her, saying nothing. She had trained without belts, without praise, just the sound of breath, movement, the path of least resistance. Farias bowed again, slower this time. I'm sorry, he said, for what happened here tonight. Tessa inclined her head once, acknowledgement, not bitterness. Behind her, the golden logo still glowed on the black wall. Sergio sat below it, shoulders slumped, his gi damp with sweat. His hands rested on his knees, unsure of what to do with them. Tessa stood alone in the center of the mat, the soft white fabric of her gi catching the light. She had made no sound, had issued no challenge, yet something fundamental had shifted in the room. Respect didn't rise in cheers, it seeped in like heat. One junior student lowered his head, another followed. The old rules, the loudest voice, the heaviest throw, the highest rank had lost their weight. And in their place stood a woman in a plain white gi, hands at her sides, still breathing like the wind. No one moved. The silence held like a sealed room. Around the edge of the mat, shoes remained still. Phones stayed lowered, and eyes shifted between the woman in white and the man who could no longer look up. Then a small movement. One student, barely 14, his belt still stiff, stepped forward. His hands trembled as he bowed low. He held the posture longer than necessary, as if unsure how to rise from it. A black belt near the back cleared his throat, voice low. I filmed it, he said. I'll delete it. Another beside him nodded slowly. No one corrected him. No one laughed. Sergio took a breath and stood. His steps toward her were uneven, heavy. He stopped 2 feet from her, then dropped to one knee, his head lowered, hands on his thighs. The gold logo glowed behind him like a quiet confession. I didn't understand, he said. I still don't, but I saw it. Tessa stood at the center of the mat, her white gi soft at the collar, her belt untied now, hanging loose at her waist. Her hands rested calmly at her sides. Will you teach me, he asked, voice tight. She looked at him, her expression unreadable, then gave a single nod. Not approval, not forgiveness, just clarity. Master Farias stepped forward. You carry a path we forgot, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. You are its keeper now. He paused. I offer you a place here, senior lineage holder. We would be honored to learn from you. Tessa shook her head once. No rank, she said softly. Just time on the mat. The words dropped into the silence like a stone in still water. No one spoke. Then the student who had bowed first lowered himself again. Another followed, and another. It moved like wind, quiet and uncontested, a ripple of bowed heads, knees touching mat, black belts, blue belts, instructors, some with pride in their posture, others with regret, none with defiance. One woman stood near the wall, her phone recording silently now, no caption, no filter, just the truth as it was, unfolding on a yellow mat beneath gold light. Tessa stood in the center, surrounded by humility. She had never raised her voice, never issued a challenge, never asked for anything. And yet they bowed, not to a rank, not to a title, to something they hadn't seen before and couldn't deny now. The dressing room was still, the hum of the overhead bulb, the only sound. Tessa sat on a metal bench, her white GI folded neatly in her lap. Her hands moved with practiced ease, smoothing the fabric one crease at a time. Beneath that calm rhythm, a small tremor moved through her fingers, barely visible. It wasn't fear, just the weight of what silence had cost her. Beside her feet, her bag lay open, soft with age, the same one she had carried in the mountains. She paused, her thumb resting on the frayed edge of her belt. It was warm from her skin, the cotton worn thin. She brought it into both hands, holding it quietly for a long breath. In her mind, the mountain air returned, crisp, still. She remembered the scent of pine soaked in rain, the sound of her teacher's steps on old wooden boards. No audience, no ceremony, just the rhythm of breath and earth and time. On her final morning there, Chen had stood beside her as the fog lifted from the trees. "Don't defend a name," he had said, "just move." Tessa folded the belt slowly, then set it in her bag. The door creaked open. She didn't turn. A voice, soft and uncertain, spoke from the hallway. "Will you come back tomorrow?" She looked over. The boy who had bowed first stood there, his shoes still untied. He was barely taller than the doorframe, his voice still settling into its strength. She studied him for a moment, then nodded once. "Only if I can clean the mats first." He blinked, confused at first. Then he smiled. It didn't fully reach his eyes, but it tried. He bowed without another word and disappeared down the hallway. Tessa sat for another minute, letting the silence settle. She tied her bag shut and stood, her footsteps soft on the floor. The mirror caught her reflection face calm, posture grounded, hair loose over one shoulder. She looked older than she had that morning, but also lighter. As she stepped into the hallway, she passed the long glass case of trophies names etched in gold, belts arranged in rigid sequence. She paused only once to glance at them, then walked on. From beyond the doors, laughter echoed faintly, not sharp, not cruel, just people talking. The sound filled the space between footsteps like something slowly healing. She moved quietly down the corridor, her fingers brushing the wall once as she passed. Not for balance, just to feel that it was there. No applause waited outside, but neither did resistance. Only the gentle hum of the building settling into night. Tessa walked through the narrow streets of São Paulo barefoot, her GI folded under one arm. The pavement was still warm from the day. Lights flickered from closed shops, and the city pulsed in the distance with the low hum of late traffic. It was past midnight, and the world behind her felt distant, like a sound already fading. Above her, unseen by choice, the internet surged. Clips from the dojo spread across platforms like sparks in dry grass. She never attacked. The woman in white. What style was that thousands commented? Some with reverence, some with disbelief. Academies posted offers. Journalists speculated. Forums filled with diagrams, trying to name what had no name. Tessa didn't read any of it. She didn't carry a phone. At the corner, she turned into a faded stairwell and began to climb. The concrete steps curved upward 5 flights, each one creaking beneath her. The rail was rusted at the seams, still cold with night air. A single bulb lit the landing, its glow soft and flickering. At the top, the rooftop opened wide under the sky. Laundry lines swayed lightly, their cords humming in the wind. The city spread below her in scattered light, buildings rising like silent thoughts against the dark. She set her GI down near the wall and stepped into the open. Her feet found the rhythm first slow pivots, measured breath, each movement soft and precise. Her hands followed, gliding without force, tracing invisible arcs through the air. She moved in silence, not for display, not for memory, just the loop she'd learned to carry forward. Above her, the moon cast pale silver across her shoulders. Each turn caught a different angle, a quiet silhouette in motion. The concrete cooled beneath her soles. In the distance, a billboard flickered with grainy footage from the demo. Her white GI blurred in motion. The clip had no sound, just overlay text and swipes of light. She didn't look toward it. She didn't need to. The wind rose slightly, brushing her hair back from her face. She moved through the air without pushing it, each step falling exactly where it had to. The lines she followed weren't visible. They were felt. Her arms circled low, then lifted with the breath. Her body leaned, adjusted, returned. There was no beginning, no end point, just the rhythm, passed down in silence. No one watched her from the streets below. No one stood at the stairwell door. The rooftop held only her, the wind, and the rhythm she kept. In the world below, names were made, brands were built, and stories spun louder than the truth inside them. Up here, there were no names, just movement. The breath she took next was slow and even, the kind that didn't rush. She turned one more time, then stood still, the wind tugging softly at the hem of her pants. She looked up once at nothing in particular. Then she bowed to the sky and kept moving. She never raised her voice, never struck back, never asked for permission to belong. Tessa walked into a world that dismissed her, stood through their laughter, and let silence do what force never could. She reminded us that real mastery isn't loud. It isn't proven through domination or titles. It's carried quietly, in breath, in patience, in the way you move through humiliation without letting it shape you. Some stories are not about winning. They're about not needing to. If this journey moved you, take a moment to reflect on where your own quiet strength lives. Share your thoughts in the comments, or follow for more stories that reveal the power of stillness, humility, and those who rise without needing to be seen.